I started hand sewing last year during the COVID lockdown. I've been sewing since I was very little. I started with machine sewing, and I've been hand sewing off and on for several years. But during the COVID lockdown, when I was working remotely and not going out very much, I decided that I needed a project to kind of keep me going and give me something to do other than just working. So I started with a hand sewing project last year. And I noticed on one of my YouTube videos, somebody commented that the sewing project that they were seeing would go a lot faster with the machine. So it occurred to me that one of the big questions in people's minds might be, why am I hand sewing? So this video is going to give a few reasons why I personally am a hand sewer. One of the biggest costs when you're starting the hobby of sewing is the initial cost. If you're thinking about purchasing a sewing machine, you might be starting with something that costs a few $100s for something that's really basic, kind of middle of the line, up to thousands of dollars. But for hand sewers, the upfront cost is a whole lot lower. You're basically looking at choosing a sewing needle instead of a machine. So for hand sewers, the upfront cost just to get you going is a lot lower. Finding resources to learn how to start hand sewing has never been easier. When I was growing up, sewing was basically taught by my mother, and looking at we didn't have sewing books, so we were purchasing patterns, and what information they had in the patterns was what you had to go by. So now it's very easy to start learning how to sew. There are tons of YouTube videos out there that can show you how to get going, and also sewing books have really come a long way. I love the DK publishing books, mostly for the pictures. When you're first learning how to sew, there are so many terms, even for something as very basic as scissors. For example, a YouTuber might be talking about pinking shears, but finding exactly what those are and visualizing what they are can be a challenge. So I definitely love all of the books that are on the market that certainly make venturing into hand sewing a lot more accessible. For most of my hand sewing, I usually stick with just 2 basic stitches. Just to let the new people out there know that hand sewing can be as simple as you want it to be, or complicated as you want it to be. For most of my sewing, what I sew is either shirts or skirts. And for those, I just use 2 very simple stitches. The first is an overlock stitch. And the overlock stitch is something that I use on the edges of the fabric to prevent fraying. And the second stitch that I use is just a really simple straight stitch. So what I do is I'll sew 2 stitches, and then for the third stitch, I will actually go over the last stitch just to give it a little more I guess sturdiness. And I use this on sewing up the pieces, the individual patterns together. So it's just a very simple stitch, and it's pretty secure, and it works for the shirts and the skirts that I sew. One of my favorite reasons for being a hand sewer is that you can sew anywhere. And this is a needle case or needle wallet that I made out of leftover materials. And it includes pins and needles, and I even constructed a pocket in the back, which includes small scissors, and it's just an easy way just to grab a kit and some fabric and go wherever I need to go to do some sewing. And you can do hand sewing in a park, sitting on a bench, or at a library. Libraries are really great places for hand sewing. They have, of course, tables or comfortable chairs, depending on how big your library is. You could even do it in your work break room. I really love doing a little bit of hand sewing on my lunch hour, so that's always a great option. And you can even bring it to the airport. Once I was in an airport and my plane was delayed for several hours, and I was so glad that I had some hand sewing to keep me occupied while I was waiting for my next plane. My last reason why I love being a hand sewer is I like to imagine that I am part of a long history of women and also men throughout history that have been hand sewing. And I like to imagine that somehow I am continuing with this tradition. And I'm hoping that the YouTube videos that I've been producing will perhaps make other people aware that they can do hand sewing as well. And maybe we will continue this tradition of hand sewing. Thank you for watching this video. And if you're a hand sewer or just somebody who's starting to learn about becoming a hand sewer, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear about your reasons why you're a hand sewer or why you're particularly interested in hand sewing.